He hugged me at the funeral and told me to take all the time I needed. I didn't know he'd already started draining our account. But he forgot I built the system, and I left a line of code just for this moment. I still remember the sound of the machines, soft beeping, a kind of false hope in a room that smelled like hand sanitizer and loss. My wife, Layla, had been fighting for weeks. The doctors used phrases like monitoring vitals and waiting for response, but I could see it in their eyes. They'd already given up. I hadn't. I held her hand every day. Some nights I'd talk to her, hoping maybe something would break through the silence. Other nights I'd just sit there in the dark, staring at her face, memorizing every line, every freckle, because deep down I knew I was running out of time. The morning she passed, I didn't cry at first. I just sat in the hallway, numb. My body felt like it had shut down, like it couldn't process one more ounce of pain. When they handed me her wedding ring in a small plastic bag, that's when it hit me. I broke down in a way I didn't know was possible for a grown man. I barely remember the funeral. People spoke to me. I nodded, maybe said thank you. Everything felt like static, but I do remember one thing clearly. My business partner, Neil, wrapped his arms around me and said, "Take all the time you need, brother. I've got everything covered." He was the closest thing I had to family now. We debuilt our software company from a cramped garage. I trusted him with my life and with my half of everything we owned. So I stepped back. I stopped checking emails. I didn't log into the admin dashboards. For weeks, I barely touched a keyboard. Layla had been my world, and without her, I couldn't see straight. I needed to disappear just for a while. Neil told me not to worry about work, and I didn't. He called occasionally to check in. Told me we de-landed another client. Said revenue was steady. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I wasn't ready to say goodbye to Layla. And while I was drowning in memories and funeral flowers, I didn't see what was really happening behind my back. But I'd find out soon enough. When I finally returned to the office, it felt like stepping into someone else's life. The desks were where they always were. My favorite coffee mug sat untouched on the corner of mine, a faint ring of dried coffee still clinging to the bottom. But everything felt off, quieter, colder. Layla used to bring me lunch some afternoons. She'd sit across from me and tease me about my terrible posture while I coded for hours. Her laugh used to echo through these walls. Now it just felt empty. Neil greeted me with a warm hug. "Man, it's good to see you," he said, slapping my back. "I kept everything running, you just focus on healing." I appreciated him more than I could say. I wasn't fully myself yet. My mind still wandered in meetings. Sometimes I'd open a file and forget why I did. But I was trying. I needed to try for Layla, for the company we built, for the people we employed. Neil had stepped up in every way. He'd signed new clients, handled finances, and managed the team. Everyone said he was a rock while I was gone. He handed me a stack of reports and said, "Take your time reviewing it, no rush, everything's steady." And it looked like it was, or at least I thought it did. Still, something small kept tapping at the back of my mind. The way people in the office looked at me, like they weren't sure if they should talk about work or avoid it altogether. A few glanced at Neil before answering my questions, but I chalked it up to awkwardness. I was the grieving co-founder. People didn't know how to act around that kind of sadness. We went out for drinks a week later. Neil raised his glass and said, "To Layla and to getting back on track." I toasted with him, but there was a strange edge in his eyes, like he was watching my every move. Still, I dismissed it. This was my partner, my friend. I wasn't thinking straight. Grief fogs everything. I told myself I just needed more time. Time to get back into the rhythm. Time to shake off the shadows. But sometimes the smallest shadows hide the darkest secrets. And soon, those shadows would start to move. I didn't realize how fragile I still was until I sat through my first client meeting. Halfway through, my hands started trembling. The client was asking questions about a new security feature we'd promised months ago, and I couldn't remember a single detail. Neil jumped in effortlessly. He handled it like a pro, confident, sharp, in control. When the call ended, he turned to me and said gently, "It's okay. You're not ready. I can keep handling things until you are." And just like that, I stepped back again. It wasn't defeat. At least that's what I told myself. It was survival. I needed more time to breathe, to heal. The office lights still gave me headaches. Layla's picture on my desk still made my throat tight. So I let Neil take over the day-to-day. Payroll, vendor contracts, client communication, even access to the core company wallet. I'd built the architecture, sure, but Neil had become the face, the operator. "You built the brain," he used to say. "I'll be the hands and feet." It worked. It always had. And I trusted him. God, I trusted him. When I first met Neil, we were just two broke coders in a shared apartment, eating instant noodles and dreaming about building something real. We spent nights whiteboarding ideas until the sun came up. He was the one who convinced me to quit my job and go all in on our first app. He believed in me when no one else did. We weren't just partners, we were brothers. So when he said, "Don't worry about the admin stuff, I've got it," I didn't even hesitate. I handed over the keys, both metaphorical and literal. Access credentials, wallet keys, contract signatures, everything. We had multi-auth protocols in place, but I disabled mine temporarily. "Just while I'm out," I had said. Neil nodded and promised, "I'll keep everything safe." And I believed him. For a while it seemed like things were stabilizing. Revenue reports came in looking healthy. Our user base was growing. The team was busy, focused. Neil was doing check-ins, managing feedback loops, even hiring contractors. It all looked like progress. But that little voice in the back of my mind hadn't gone quiet. It whispered doubts I didn't want to hear. And one night when I couldn't sleep, I finally listened. It started with a small itch I couldn't ignore. I was up late again. Sleep had become a stranger since Layla passed. I'd been lying in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, feeling like I was floating in someone else's life. Out of habit more than anything, I opened my laptop and logged into our systems, just something to ground me. I wasn't expecting to find anything wrong. I wasn't looking for trouble. I just wanted to feel like myself again, even if only for a few minutes. But when I opened the wallet dashboard, something felt off. The numbers didn't look right. Our liquid balance was lower than I remembered. Not drastically low, just enough to make me squint. I thought maybe I was mistaken. Maybe we'd moved funds into cold storage or paid a contractor I'd forgotten about. Still, something about it bothered me. I clicked into the transaction history. That's when I saw it, several withdrawals spaced out over a few weeks, all marked as internal disbursements. No vendor names, no invoices attached, just quiet movements of money, small at first. 10,000 here, 20 there, but it added up. $500,000 gone. I sat up straight, my chest tightened. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe Neil moved the money for a new project. Maybe he'd invested it somewhere. Maybe he forgot to document it. It didn't feel like him to be sloppy, but then again, nothing felt normal anymore. I texted him, "Hey, just reviewing some stuff. Can we talk tomorrow about the wallet transactions?" No reply. It was nearly 2 a.m., so I didn't expect one. But sleep was out of the question now. I pulled up access logs next. The timestamps lined up with the dates of the withdrawals, and each one showed a login using Neil's admin key. Same IP, same device, no signs of breach, no outside access. That voice in my head, the one I'd silenced for weeks, came roaring back. He said he'd handle things. What if this is how he did it? I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't. But the silence in that account said more than any words ever could. And I wasn't going to ignore it anymore. I told myself I just needed to understand. That maybe if I dug deep enough, I'd find a reason that made sense, one that didn't involve betrayal. But deep down, I already knew. I could feel it like a chill down my spine. I opened the server logs. It was the kind of thing only I really knew how to navigate. I'd built most of the backend myself, laid out every timestamp line, every access point, every user authentication trail. The logs didn't lie, people could. But code always tells the truth. I traced it step by step. Neil had logged in late at night, multiple times. The transactions always followed. He bypassed our standard review process by escalating privileges on the admin console, something only he and I could do. But he didn't just move the funds. He hid the traces, masked the entries under temporary scripts, then deleted them after execution. Not permanently deleted, just buried deep enough where no one would bother looking. No one except the guy who wrote the damn thing. My hands trembled over the keyboard. Every new line of data hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't a one-time lapse. It wasn't a desperate mistake. It was planned, thought out, systematic. This wasn't just someone taking advantage of a bad situation. This was betrayal. I leaned back in my chair, the room spinning around me. I thought about Layla, about the day Neil stood beside me at her funeral, hand on my shoulder, telling me to rest, telling me he'd protect what we built. And while I wept for the love of my life, he was draining everything else I had left. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just sat there, the monitor glow washing over me like a cold wave. And then something shifted. Beneath the hurt, the heartbreak, the disbelief, there was something else. Clarity. I knew what I had to do. There was one thing Neil had forgotten. I had built the foundation of everything. Every line of code, every transaction route, every logic gate. I knew the system better than anyone, including him. And somewhere in that system was a trap I'd coded long ago. A trigger, one he didn't know existed. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the same chair, watching the screen go dark and light again as the monitor timed out and woke up with every twitch of my finger. It was like my body wouldn't let me walk away, wouldn't let me pretend this wasn't happening. He took everything, not just the money. He took my trust. He took the company I bled for. And he did it while I was curled up on my living room floor, clutching my wife's old sweater like a lifeline, crying harder than I ever had in my life. While I was breaking apart, Neil was piecing together a way to make a future without me, one transaction at a time. I thought about confronting him, thought about storming into his apartment, waking him up and demanding answers. But what would that do? He'd lie. He was already too good at that. Besides, emotions had already cost me once. This time I needed to think like a coder, not a broken man. I pulled up a hidden module I hadn't touched in 2 years. It was something I wrote in the early days, back when we were experimenting with decentralized architecture. Layla had teased me about it. She called it my paranoid switch. It was a conditional trigger, buried in the backend, invisible unless you knew what to look for. If the right sequence of withdrawals happened without a mirrored audit trail, the system would autolock access and reroute control to a cold wallet only I could unlock. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't even fully tested, but it was there, a ghost line of defense in case we were ever hacked or betrayed. Neil never knew about it. He'd always skipped over that section of the code, said it was too redundant. I let him believe that. Now I was grateful I did. I stared at it for a long time. My hand hovered over the keyboard. Triggering it meant confirming what I already suspected, that my partner, the man I trusted like a brother, wasn't coming back from this. I hit enable. No turning back now. The funds stopped moving that night. My phone buzzed just after 9 a.m. Neil. For a second, I just stared at his name on the screen, my thumb frozen above the answer button. I already knew what the call was about. The lock had triggered. The funds were frozen. The cold wallet had taken control. Every path he used to siphon money had collapsed overnight. I answered. "Hey man," he started, voice a little too casual. "Something's wrong with the wallet. I'm locked out." I stayed quiet. He cleared his throat. "Not sure what's going on. Looks like some kind of system bug. I thought maybe you were doing a security patch or—" I cut him off. "I saw the logs, Neil." Silence. Long, heavy, guilty silence. Then he laughed, nervous, shaky. "What do you mean?" I kept my voice calm. $500,000, internal disbursements, unauthorized withdrawals, your device, your IP, you moved the money, you thought I wouldn't check. Still no reply. I could hear his breath short and ragged through the line. His world was crashing and he knew it. "I did," he began, then stopped, tried again. "Look, I was going to tell you, things got tight. I had some debts. I was going to pay it back." "With what?" I snapped. "The next round of funding, more lies. You stole from me while I was grieving, Neil, while I was trying to survive." "I didn't mean to hurt you, man," he whispered. "I didn't know what else to do." That was the part that cut the deepest. Not just that he did it, but that he looked me in the eyes at the funeral, hugged me, and lied through his teeth. I had loved him like a brother, and he sold that for $500,000. "I froze the funds," I said. "Everything you took is locked. It's sitting in a cold wallet only I can access. The keys are mine now." He didn't say anything. What could he say? I ended the call. For a moment, I just sat there. No anger, no satisfaction, just emptiness. I hadn't won anything. I'd stopped the bleeding, but the wound was still there. Still, I wasn't broken. Not anymore. Lying awake that night, I thought about loss in a way I never had before. Layla was gone. That pain was raw, unbearable, and real. But losing Neil, the man I trusted like a brother, felt like a different kind of heartbreak. One forged not from death, but from betrayal. I never imagined I'd say goodbye twice in such a short time. I paced the room, hands trembling as memories flooded my mind. The laughs we shared in that cramped apartment before we built the company, the promises we made, the dreams we chased, and how quickly it all unraveled while I was trying to hold myself together. But there was a strange clarity in the chaos. I realized that grief doesn't stop you from living. It doesn't mean you lose yourself forever. It's a weight, a shadow that makes you stronger if you let it, if you learn from it. Neil had broken me, yes, but he hadn't defeated me. I sat at my desk and looked at the code again. That trigger I'd enabled wasn't just a line of defense. It was a symbol. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, I could protect what mattered. That I could fight back, not with anger or revenge, but with careful, patient strength. I decided to tell the team the truth. Not every detail, not everything that hurt like a knife. But enough so they'd know where we stood, that the company was still mine, that I was back. It was hard facing them, harder than I thought it would be. There were questions, doubts, hurt. But there were also nods, hands shaken, a few tears. Some of them told me stories about Layla, little moments I never knew about that showed me how deeply she'd touched their lives. It reminded me that even though she was gone, she was still part of this company, part of me. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start healing. The days after I told the team felt like stepping into the sunlight after a long, cold winter. There was pain, sure, but there was also hope. I started working harder than ever, coding, strategizing, reaching out to clients. Every line of code I wrote felt like a small victory, a brick laid in rebuilding what Neil tried to steal from me. The company wasn't just a business anymore. It was my lifeline, my tribute to Layla, and my proof that I wasn't broken. The team rallied around me. Some stayed because they believed in what we built together. Others joined fresh, hungry to be part of something real. I made sure transparency was the foundation this time. No secrets, no hidden triggers, just honesty. Every day was a battle, not just against the shadow Neil left behind, but against the doubt that whispered maybe I wasn't enough. But with each passing week, that doubt faded. Clients who had been on the fence came back. New contracts started rolling in. Revenue grew, not as fast as before, but steadily, surely. I also took care of myself for the first time in months. Therapy sessions helped unpack the grief, the betrayal, and the anger. Friends who'd been distant came closer, and slowly I found moments of peace I hadn't thought possible. I realized something else. While Neil stole $500,000, he couldn't steal my passion. He couldn't take the code I wrote, the company culture I fostered, or the memories of Layla that pushed me forward. In losing so much, I found a new strength, a new reason to fight. And though the scars would always remain, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't walking this path alone anymore. Looking back now, I realized the trigger I coded wasn't just a piece of software. It was a lifeline, a quiet guardian that protected everything we'd built from unraveling completely. Neil's betrayal cut deep, but it didn't break me. That trigger was the last line of defense, the silent promise I made to myself and to Layla that I wouldn't let anything destroy the life we fought so hard to create. Since then, the company has started to thrive again. The cold wallet still holds the frozen funds, a constant reminder of what happened and why I must stay vigilant. But more than that, it reminds me of the strength I discovered in the darkest moments. I've learned that grief can be a catalyst, not a cage. That betrayal can reveal who we really are, not just who we thought we were. And that sometimes the most powerful things we build aren't just in code or contracts. They're in the trust we choose to protect and the courage we find to keep moving forward. Neil was my partner once, a brother, a friend. And though he stole from me while I was grieving, he couldn't steal my will to fight back. Because when I needed it most, I had already built a safety net, a trigger coded not just into software, but into my soul. And that trigger saved us,